Welcome to Brad Dacus Live. I'm Brad Dacus, president and founder of the Pacific Justice Institute. Folks, on today's show, we've got a number of very important cases to talk about that I know you're going to be very interested in. And to do that, I have with us here with us, as usual, attorney with Pacific Justice Institute, Michael Peffer, who heads up the Southern California office for PJI. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Brad.
Okay, let's start right off the bat on this very important court decision that just came down. Many people probably have not seen this yet unless they're getting our emails and our updates.
That's right.
But for those who have not seen it yet, I want to talk about it. It's our Gateway versus Newsome case.
That's right.
What happened is the Santa Clara County and Governor Gavin Newsom came down with these edicts shutting down the churches, saying almost all of them are in Tier 1. They have to all be shut down. You can't have any indoor services at all.
Right.
Then the Supreme Court came out just days ago and said, no, you can't do that. This is unequal treatment. You need to allow churches to have at least a 25% occupancy. Let them have indoor services.
Yes.
And it was, and that itself was an injunction.
That's
right.
Right.
Before the full merits could even be heard, they stepped in on this. Well, Santa Clara County didn't apparently respect the United States Supreme Court.
Apparently not.
And take it from there.
Well, Santa Clara County proudly announced, you can't have indoor services in Santa Clara County, even though the United States Supreme Court enjoined the state of California from enforcing that regulation. Santa Clara, not to be stopped and not to be, get over their persecution of Christian churches, they have basically tried to say no to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, but my understanding is they said, well, we have our own county requirements, our own county restrictions and methodology. It's different than the states.
Yes.
So we're not using the states. We're using something else over here. They're just so belligerent to persecute.
It's interesting. I hope they're contacting the lawyer that advised them to say that, because that wasn't good advice.
No, it was definitely was not good advice. But it just shows you how entrenched, how insidious some of these public leaders are against the church, against Christians.
Yeah.
Because this is totally illogical. I mean, someone with a C-grade legal education, I think, could have given him better counsel than that. But I'll leave it at that.
Agreed.
So,
fair enough.
So what happened is our chief counsel, Kevin Snyder, we've already filed a lawsuit against Santa Clara County, the most notorious, vicious county in the United States when it comes to shutting down churches since the pandemic. We have a lawsuit against them. We also have a lawsuit against Gavin Newsom, the state of California. It's very well orchestrated, very well put together.
That's right.
Our chief counsel, hearing this, filed an emergency motion for an immediate injunctive relief.
That's right.
With the federal judge. And what happened then?
And the county of Santa Clara got spanked. They were told no, they cannot disregard the U.S. Supreme Court's injunction. They do so at their own peril, and it's fortunately this judge basically says you can't do that. When the Supreme Court makes an injunction, that is the highest court in the land, and no part of the government, smaller, even if it's a smaller subsection of California state government, can disregard that. And we're so thankful that we were able to get in there. PGI was able to get in there. Kevin Snyder, and put a stop to the county of Santa Clara's quote-unquote reasoning.
Yeah, we have a number of churches we're representing in this lawsuit. The home church, actually I've guest preached at the home church before.
Yeah.
At least once or twice. The Spectrum Church, Orchard Community Church, Trinity Bible Church. So our clients are happy, but this goes beyond just defending these churches. This is an ultimatum protecting all the churches in Santa Clara County.
Right.
And if there's any counties in California right now who are thinking about being belligerent and rogue like Santa Clara County, they better think twice, because that was a stupid move by that county.
Yeah.
And they're paying the price for it. The case is still continuing. I understand that we have in litigation.
That's right.
Because we want full and complete relief. So we want complete vindication for the rights of churches.
Absolutely. And I want people to understand here what's happening. So you have the United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. They say California cannot enforce this order forbidding churches from meeting inside. Real simple. They cannot do it. So then a subsection of that California government says, no, we're not going to listen to the Supreme Court. So thankful that we have a judge, this Judge Davalos, who it was willing to say, you guys don't have the authority to disobey that order. And that's really important. And that's what we love to do, is make sure the government is following the law. And it's critical. It's just critical.
It really is. And folks, if you're watching this show and your church is in a similar situation where they're told absolutely no indoor services, period, contact us immediately. We do all our work without charge. We have offices coast to coast, from Miami to New York to Southern California to Seattle and cities in between, all across the country. Right. So do not hesitate to give us a call or to go to our website, pji.org, and request assistance. And then also, if you didn't get this announcement of this major breaking case that just came out yesterday, this decision, late yesterday, it's probably because you're not getting our Legal Insider. So if you want to get that, go to our website, sign up to get the Legal Insider. It's just once a week. You'll get our press releases, and you'll be getting this information. You can talk about it before the media networks get it and have a chance to report on it. But this is very important. In fact, sometimes media won't report on it at all.
Exactly, that's right.
Because they don't like the outcome, so they won't even talk about it. We've noticed that. Even Fox News seems to be moving to the wrong direction.
Which is why everybody should tune in to his channel, hischannel.com, where we are played every single day, or every day but Friday, and get the news. So we're able to say forth the news and understand that.
Well, actually, I think we're on Fridays too. I think they play one of our shows on Friday also. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I haven't.
But the bottom line is, they can hear us at least 4 or 5 times a week.
Exactly.
It's because hischannel.com is independent. People can rely on them.
That's right.
And they have great coverage, talking about what's happening that the news often doesn't carry. So I encourage that as well as we move forward. Now, speaking of atrocities taking place, parents' rights is an area that we have a keen forte in a number of areas in defending parents' rights.
That's right. And
we have with us to talk about some of the things that we've done recently, and I've done actually in the past for some parents, is one of these particular parents that we've assisted, Kelly Shinakux. That's my best.
Shinkoski?
Okay, you much better than me.
Shinkoski.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I think that's right.
Did I? Okay, he did a better job than I did, didn't he?
Yes.
Okay, Kelly.
You don't have to agree with him.
No, thank you, Kelly. So I really appreciate you being on the program, and it means a lot. So give us some heads up. I understand you have some areas where some New Age content was coming into schools. I really appreciate what you're going to talk about, because it gives a nice real-life heads up to parents who have their kids in public schools. Let's talk about the first example of the New Age content. What happened?
Yes, so we learned that mindfulness meditation was occurring in the school. The principal had ended the last 10 minutes of recess and was using a Buddhist singing bowl and had the students meditating.
Really? Okay, and this is in what county?
This is Monterey County.
Monterey County. Okay. So that was taking place, and what happened then?
Yes, so we contacted Pacific Justice Institute, and incredibly helpful. They were able to contact the school, have our children opted out. We were able to provide some research that I had done. There is a multifaceted aspect of all the social emotional learning happening in our schools.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, and you know this. What's incredible, Kelly, is that here we have a school that basically shuts down all Christian expression, or I should say, attempts to until PJI gets involved, but shuts down this Christian contact. But it's okay to bring in Buddhist philosophy and meditation and things that actually are demonic activity.
Exactly. Yeah, they were going to bring in Mind Up curriculum, which is tied to the actress Goldie Hawn, where all the teachers are trained, they get Buddhist singing bowls, and they have the kids meditate in the lotus position 3 times a day.
Wow.
And because of PJI's action, they actually completely canceled that program, and they still have at that district a social emotional program, but they canceled that program entirely. You guys have been just an immense help to us.
Yeah, and I know Monterey, that area spiritually is very challenged and dark. There's many engaging in New Age and in witchcraft, and I've heard of talks of sacrifices and other things. It's a very spiritually intensive, challenging place. So I'm really glad that there's parents like you who are willing to stand up to this. It's very real, and it can have a definite impact on our kids. I understand they also wanted to change the Christmas songs. Tell me more.
That's right. The new music teacher came in, and we were told that he was going to be rewriting all of the Christmas songs for the holiday concert. Sandy the Sandman took over Frosty the Snowman, and the PE teachers are coming to town, took over Santa Claus is coming to town, and they were going to rewrite O Come All Ye Faithful. This is a district that I grew up in, and Christianity was respected when I was in this school district years ago, and now it's become this hostile environment to be a Christian in these schools. It's very sad.
It really is, and one of the things, one thing I love about working with PGI is that our goal is to empower you. We love to come alongside you as a mom who knows what is best for her children, and to make it so that your voice is amplified. And it's so wonderful when parents speak up to these, if you will, to use the phrase, speak to power and say, no, we're not going to accept this with our children.
Yeah, and that you did exactly that, didn't you, Kelly, with regards to these Christmas songs?
Yes, it was a blessing because PJI, their letter helped, not only for that concert, but then the year after that. There was actually a song that they allowed that my daughter was able to sing, which was very much honoring to not just Christmas in the secular sense, but Christmas in the faith sense. Your organization, it really helped our family.
Yeah, that's. I also understand that Planned Parenthood came to town, and
right.
That was another. Tell us about what happened then.
Yes. Planned Parenthood was scheduled to be the speaker covering the new comprehensive sexuality education at the middle school where my nephew attends, and my son was due to attend. I had been researching sex ed, working with teams of parents in the state of California, and I was called by multiple middle school parents saying, Kelly, they told us today that Planned Parenthood is coming next week. We only have 5 days advance notice before, including the weekend. And so I had encouraged many of these parents, contact PJI, and PJI was right there to help them stop that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
When we called them to task, and it was effective. They delayed, and notice was properly given. But that's because parents blew the whistle and contacted us, parents like you. So I appreciate that so much.
And we understand, Kelly, that you also have a sort of a side ministry, if you will, where you go into schools and talk about on behalf of the Pregnancy Center. And what's that all about?
So that all started in 1987. My mom is the executive director there, and it was the 26th pregnancy center in the nation, and it's a program called Aiming for Excellence. It's typically a presentation where we've gone into the public schools, often after Planned Parenthood has just presented in these public schools, and we're able to talk about things and encourage these teens towards making better choices and considering the choices that they're making, and considering on a deeper level even things like what is really love and what builds a healthy relationship. Why are there benefits towards waiting to have sex until marriage? Those types of concepts. And it has been tremendous to go into these schools over the years, because the kids fill out an anonymous survey and they love the presentation. Wow. It's engaging. It's giving them information. A lot of them say this: thank you for coming to my class, because you taught me things today that I never realized before, or I never thought about these decisions like this until today.
And we're so thankful for moms like you that you're doing the laboring oar here. PGI, as we come alongside to assist, but you are a hero in our books, because look, without moms like you, this goes unabated in these schools, and we know it's a lot of dreadful stuff coming along.
Yeah, and I understand that the California Healthy Youth Act seems to be a threat to what you're doing and engaged in. Explain that.
Yes, so the new California Healthy Youth Act has established requirements for guest speakers. And those requirements include the affirmation of certain subjects that they now deem required by all guest speakers, certain training for guest speakers. And so it's now put pregnancy centers into a position of, do I compromise my beliefs, which we are unwilling to compromise, and or do we continue to go in the schools and change our messaging? So it's so important that is something that we're evaluating as we look into the future, is whether this program that's been every semester in the school since 1987 will be able to continue, or will be not allowed to proceed.
Kelly, what are some of the things, can you give an example of what you're being told with this new California Healthy Youth Act that violates your conscience, that you're being requested to include in your future presentations? Can you share any of that at all at this time?
Yeah, so my understanding, as far as I know, is that we would need to be undergoing training within comprehensive sexuality education. So there would be a training aspect of it. The other thing is we are required to look favorably unto all of the different, basically the new established standards for the definition of marriage, sexuality, and gender. And this is very similar to what we're seeing in the churches, being, what's coming up as far as a challenge. Those areas, we're being in a position where we either, we're not willing to compromise in those areas. We believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. We believe in two genders. And that is what makes up the family. And the family is so important.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I wanted you to articulate that, because I want people to understand how evil and unreasonable the state of California has become to push out groups like yours doing wonderful work to help young people make great decisions.
That's right.
And yet they're trying to destroy that and replace it with information that studies show go the other direction for kids. It's so I appreciate what you're doing, Kelly, and thank you for your willingness to continue to contact Pacific Justice Institute. We can't help people like you unless people contact us, And you're just out there on the front lines, and it's just a real blessing when we have those opportunities to serve you in multiple areas, in multiple ways moving forward. And we look forward to serving you and the other people in Monterey County in the days ahead. So thank you so much for being on this show.
God
Thank
bless.
you. So appreciate you and your work.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Well, Michael, I am encouraged when I hear people like her,
That's right.
who you can tell by her countenance. She's an ambassador for Christ.
That's right.
She has a gentle, a warm, a loving countenance
Absolutely.
that comes with that relationship she has with Christ. But she also stands her grounds.
Yeah.
She's not silent when she realizes the stakes are the children moving forward.
And we have seen I have seen over my time, and I know you have too here at PGI, so many moms who are willing to lay their life down, and they're willing to say, no, we are not going to accept New Age philosophy. We are not going to accept this termination of Christmas, if you will. We're not going to accept all these notions of sexuality that go squarely against the Bible, the Word of God, and they're going to stand up, and they're going to be counted, and I'm so thankful for them.
Yeah, and also you said goes against the Word of God. It also goes against science.
Absolutely.
And all the studies that show when someone engages and takes this direction, there's a consequence to that moving forward. And I think that getting the truth in presentations like hers is so helpful, so important to our kids.
Yeah.
And yet we have so much in moving from the other direction, courtesy of our legislators in Sacramento, California.
Absolutely.
Other states have been beholden to things like the California Healthy Youth Act. Other cities, even in more conservative states, cities like I understand like St. Louis and others have jumped into this and said, oh, this is great. We're going to bring in this radical stuff into our kids, to our young children. It's really disheartening, and we need more and more parents to stand up, because that's why we have these offices across the country, is to represent parents like this.
And you can see from what Kelly related to us. So you have this massive system called California Healthy Youth Act, which is really indoctrination. It really kills the spirit of little children when they have to hear about things about sexuality that they're either A, not ready to hear, or B, it's not necessary for them to hear, and C, it's offensive to the vast majority of people. And so here she tries to bring in another view, and they say, no, you have to give the view that we want you to give. You have to affirm what we want you to affirm. And to me, that is really insane. We really have to fight against this. And we've already done this in other contexts with the California made so that abortion clinics had to recommend people where to get abortions. And so we went to court, and the Supreme Court held that they can't do that. Maybe it's time for a similar case about this kind of nonsense that the school districts are trying to pull off in California.
Now, we have a very valuable resource available, a couple resources I want people to be aware of. One is a film called Sex Ed, SEXXX Ed,
Yes.
Let Parents Decide. Hundreds of thousands, I understand, have seen it. Large numbers have seen this. It's available for free on our website, pji.org. So I know people would really, it's very explicit, very graphic.
Yeah.
Parents only, no teenagers. It's no single people. I wouldn't even, parents should watch this. The other resource we have is a book called Reclaim Your School, how parents, ministers, youth workers, and others can evangelize public schools and students in a very positive way. And it has a very important resource in that book that people can order. They can get all without charge.
That's right.
Tell us about that valuable resource to help parents protect their kids, at least to some degree, in cities across the country.
Well, we have, are you speaking about our book, the Reclaim Your Schools?
Yes, and then the
book-
opt-out form that's in the book.
Exactly, and we have this resource that is you really should get this. If you're a parent with school-age children, you really need to get this. You authored it along with your wife, and it really is a helpful resource that you can turn to anytime you want, and it's free of charge. But also, we also have within that book and on our website, we also have the ability to have opt-out forms throughout the country. And again, all you have to do is go on our website, look it up, and decide that what state you're from and get the appropriate law-based opt-out forms.
Yeah, and they can get that on our website at pji.org, P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org. And while they're there, they can also sign up to get our Legal Insider newsletter and keep up with our many cases. We have a number of cases ongoing right now across the country. I want to touch on one, if we can here, that I think is very timely, and that's dealing with a Florida city threatening a Hispanic church with a $5,000 fine if they hold prayer services. This is in the village of Palm Springs, Florida. What's going on?
Yeah, well, what's going on is there's an evangelist that many of our listeners will be familiar with. His name is Sean Foyt. And he is going all over the country, and wonderful things are happening. God is using this brother really greatly. And so he goes to communities, and they have, if you will, revival meetings, and people come to the Lord. And there's a really sweet and great movement at the hands of this. And so this church, wanting to be involved and wanting to advance the kingdom in this way, well, they have decided to hold prayer meetings, sponsor revival meetings, and the city of Palm Springs, Florida, that is, not California, they have come in and said, no, we're gonna fine you $5,000 per day if you participate in these prayer meetings, revival meetings, and so this is something that. It's just amazing to me that this would go on still, even in Florida, where they have relatively free ability there, and so we're anxious to see what's going to happen here.
And we have an office not too far from there. Actually, it's in Miami, Florida. I understand it. I don't think it's so. We're here ready to serve and represent this church and churches like this going through this kind of a situation.
Absolutely.
Without charge.
Absolutely.
I have to say that because we're attorneys.
Yeah, and people can't believe that.
Yeah. I think that's, it is what it is. So I just want to make sure people know that. They should never hesitate to contact us, pastors like this pastor in this situation. That's what we're here for, is to serve them. That's why we have these offices across the country, to do that exact thing and to step up and to make sure people get the representation that they need.
Absolutely.
It's a great ministry. Hats off for that church, opening their doors for that kind of ministry, outreach, evangelism. We need revival in America.
We do.
Like never before. Long term, we cannot change the long term unless we see hearts come to Jesus.
Yep, that's
and
right.
That's the bottom line. Everything we do is around that presupposition that we need people to be able to come to Christ, and we're working hard to keep open those doors for such revival and such evangelism to take place without oppression by the state.
Yeah.
Folks, we're going to talk about more cases and case matters when we return right after this.
What is faith? Where does it come from? How does it work? What does it accomplish? Why does it please God? Faith takes you by the hand and walks you from one level of spiritual maturity to another. That is why the Word of God says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. It was faith that led Abraham into the land of promise. It was faith that led the children of Israel through the Red Sea. It was faith that enabled Peter to step out of the boat and walk on water. The question is, what might faith do for you? The late Pastor Chuck Smith explores these and a host of other questions as they relate to issues of faith. Using examples from God's Word as well as illustrations gleaned from over 60 years of ministry, Pastor Chuck lays out a strong case for the importance of faith. Faith, a book by Pastor Chuck Smith, is our gift this month only for any donation of $20 or more. You can help his channel broadcast the good news of Jesus Christ 24 hours a day. Become a family co-laborer today. Help us bring the message of life to the lost. Go to hischannel.com, click the donation link, or send your tax-deductible gift to His Channel, Post Office Box 25, Santa Ana, California, 92702.
His Channel, teaching the gospel on listener-supported television.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. On the rest of the program, we have a number of issues that are very, I guess, for mature audiences only.
I'd say so.
So I wanted to make the audience sensitive to that. One of those issues dovetails perfectly with our discussion of the California Healthy Youth Act.
Yeah.
This is a radical piece of legislation. Other states are following it, bringing in radical LGBTQ material,
That's right.
very sexually explicit, which we have on our sex ed video.
That's right.
That's for mature audiences only. And one of the points we made earlier is the fact that this material, what they advocate in terms of transgenders, having a boy have them change as a girl, have puberty blockers. They think it's great, but a study's come out that actually finds that it's not so great. There are actual physical ramifications, long-term physical damage to the human body for those kids who are naively lured into this kind of radical, controversial medical procedures, like stunting the puberty and the pubic
blocking them.
Blocking them. Thank you.
Yes.
So, what's going on with this new research, and why should parents have a second thought before engaging in this pattern, this lifestyle change, if you will, with their children?
Well, and we have fought against this issue in court involving parents who their children get taken away because they won't cooperate with this. So we know firsthand what the dangers of this are, and we've been talking about it for a long time. But with all this sex education that is pushing children to say, I can't count on my gender because I might be something else. And now they're actually pushing, in some schools, want to be able to do this without parental consent. That is, push these medicines that are really hardcore medicines. It is very difficult for the body of these children. They want to block their hormones, so their hormones don't get advanced as they grow. Right. Something that causes the growth of everything else. You cannot stop puberty by saying, oh, we're just going to give you a medicine to do it. It has very negative results. And now we're seeing research to that effect that basically shows that when they're done, this blockade, which happens up until they're 16 years old, their growth is stunted. They have less bone development. They have other issues, this reduced growth in both height and bone strength. So these puberty blockers are, I don't know another word to say it, damning these kids to a really, really hard life over something that most kids will grow out of by the time they're 18.
Right. And I think it's a really important point. If kids are left alone, most will work through it by the time they finish high school.
Yeah.
And yet we have some zealous parents out there. Sometimes they themselves are have a lifestyle that's already divergent from the laws of nature and nature's God, if you will.
That's right.
And so they feel obliged to willingly go against the laws of nature and nature's God when it comes to the healthy development that the DNA of the child has naturally put into place, which is puberty.
Yeah.
There's a time for that. There's a reason that child and the DNA is set that clock to go off and start puberty
Right.
at that time. And when that is interrupted, there are ramifications, long-term ramifications that are taking place with those children. I think also what's important is the psychological ramifications.
Oh, yes.
Children who are led down this path of death and destruction, it's literally that, because most of them will not live to see their 30th birthday. Most of them will commit suicide
Yeah.
out of depression, unresolved depression, by the age of 30. The procedure, the hormone injections do not solve problems. They still are maintained. A large number of them actually get on Social Security disability
Yeah.
because their mental conditions and chronic depression and bipolar and everything that they're dealing with is exacerbated and magnified. So it's very concerning, and yet this study points out from a physical perspective that it's not just psychological ramifications, it's not just terminating of their lives statistically,
Yeah.
it's also actually damaging the body in terms of its very structure and framework, the human bones.
And for what purpose? Because we know this, and our heart goes out to people that are struggling with gender dysphoria. My heart goes
Yes.
out to them. They need Jesus. They need healing. They have issues that they have to deal with, like many people do. But this, it doesn't even the proponents of this puberty blocking say it won't alleviate psychological distress. Well, but that's the whole reason why they're doing it, is for psychological distress. So it is really messing up a young person's body at the expense of so much more, and it doesn't help these children deal with the feelings of gender dysphoria.
Yeah, I understand in 2019, California endocrinologist Dr. Michael Laidlaw detailed in a Heritage Foundation panel the harms of gender identity medicine that had been previously discovered through a Freedom of Information request and found at the Tavistock Gender Clinic, which a UK High Court ruled against in a recent judicial review, that children that were treated at the facility reported greater self-harm with these particular medications, and girls exhibited greater emotional problems and dissatisfaction with their bodies.
Yeah.
This is
so
a path of death and destruction. I am confident that in the end, we're going to see these procedures banned and prohibited, because the evidence is just mounting and mounting, that I think it will be just overwhelming for them to realize this is the wrong direction. I think it's going to be compelling, even with the delusional society that we have, with the spiritual warfare we're dealing with. I'd like to think we're going to reach a point, but how many people are going to suffer,
That's the point.
Michael, in the process? How many are going to die and take their lives?
Yeah.
And
Well, this is so critical, because these children are getting these blockers from 12 to 15 years old. That is a time when their bodies are already in upheaval. So what are we going to do? We're going to cause more upheaval, and it won't cure the problem. Even the surgery, the studies show, doesn't cure the problem.
Right.
There's still a psychological issue, and notwithstanding the mutilation of these people's bodies, they still have the problem.
yeah, they do. And the risk of suicide is already very high during this. The highest time of suicide is during puberty, during that time in life, 12 to 15. That's the highest suicide rate.
Yeah.
That's where kids are hormonally the most unstable,
Right.
with really happy and then really depressed. And yet, that is at the same time that they're messing around with this healthy development and causing issues and problems that studies show exist. So shame on those that are doing this. Parents, be awake. And if you have cases out there where you know that there's a family in this crisis, they don't know what to do, their child is still a minor, contact us at Pacific Justice Institute for assistance and help. You did a great job, Michael, in the case that I know you're thinking of when you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
A fantastic job. The child was rescued from being taken by social workers where they were going to force the procedure, given back to the mother and the family, and the Christian family. And at the end of the day, the child said, I don't think I want to change my gender after all.
Exactly.
So
that was the most unbelievable thing that it really hit you right between the eyes.
Yeah, it just shows you.
Yeah.
And how close did she come, absent our intervention, from a life-changing decision that would have been a very destructive path. So hats off to you for that. Now, a professor has come out, a Christian analyst and cultural commentator, with regards to a new philosophy being pushed by radicals in our academia that is very alarming. In essence, my understanding is they're now saying that heterosexuality is tragic, is problematic, is now the problem.
That's right.
What's going on?
Yeah, well, fortunately for this for us, we are seeing some research on this. A Dr. Janice Krause, who wrote the book Children at Risk, she points out, and I think rightly so, that really what at the heart of all of this is to say the Bible is wrong, that the creative order is wrong. And that really is, I think this is symptomatic of a society that has turned its back on God, and they want to erase all of the wonderful things that are inherent in the fact that we're created in the image of God. So God created us male and female, and now we're seeing not just an attempt to legalize, which has already happened in the United States and many other countries, to legalize same-sex marriage, but now they're saying, the people that are really messed up are those heterosexual people. So, a professor here in Riverside, she encourages men to. She says heterosexuality encourages men to objectify women and pull them into toxic masculine culture. So. That's the problem. That's our problem, is that we have, that women have to associate with men. It just turns society on its head, and it's just unbelievable to me.
Yeah, she's a lesbian educator, and she authored the book, The Tragedy of Heterosexuality.
Yeah.
And suggests that straight men and women would benefit by, quote, taking a page, end quote, out of queer culture.
Yeah.
So this is sick, but people need to understand now. They don't. The radical LGBTQ, they're not satisfied with let bygones be bygones. You have your way, we have our way.
That's right.
They now want to change our society to condemn any form of traditionalism when it comes to heterosexual relationships moving forward. And yet a study was done, actually, that married couples that have greater definition of tasks, of responsibilities, of expectations, they actually have less conflict, a lower divorce rate,
Yes.
And happier marriages, as opposed to the more contemporary secular humanist philosophy, which is make sure that you all have the same, you both do the same tasks, just alternate on all the different tasks. Make sure you're all doing the same thing, so that way it's all equal in every way, shape and form.
Exactly.
And yet it negates where we naturally have strengths, and wants to ignore the differences between men and women.
Yeah.
So that's now we see this a condemnation of masculinity.
Yes.
For everyone, and that is very, very alarming. I think it's also interesting that she says, quote, or this is Dr. Krause, says, everything that this Professor Ward, Janice Ward, who we just talked about, says about this wonderful, wonderful relationship, which is heterosexual
Marriage,
relationships,
yeah.
marriage. You don't have to deal with men with all their problems. Well, the facts don't bear that out, according to Dr. Krauss contends, and says lesbians actually have a much higher violence than heterosexual couples.
Yeah.
So domestic violence cases are much higher
Yes.
in lesbian relationships than in traditional heterosexual relationships.
Yes. Yes. So as it turns out, it's not the problem of being male that causes all this. We know that the problem with this is largely unregenerate men who need the Lord, just like women need the Lord, and that creates some of the problems that they call toxic masculinity. But a society without the masculine is a society that's doomed, and we need both. God created us male and female, and God saw that it was good, and that's good enough for me.
And what's interesting is we're ignoring basic history of psychology
Yeah.
and biology, which show that the male and female brains function differently.
Yeah.
They are different.
Yes.
Women have more gray matter proportions. Men have more white matter proportions. Male brains are more compartmentalized. Women brains are less compartmentalized. Can have multiple thought patterns. Men are more linear in their thought patterns. There's so much
Yeah.
hormonally, physically, in terms of our instinctive needs. So this is it's just ignoring reality of
Yeah.
science and even psychology and statistics with regards to relationships. So I'm glad this professor, Dr. Janice Krauss, is outspoken regarding this. The sad thing is, I can see Dr. Krauss, having some major pushback. There's going to be lots of hatred and vitriol for her speaking the truth,
That's right.
despite her professional credentials.
Yeah. And that's that's where we find ourselves in this place where we're going to quiet everyone who has a different view, which actually is the only view, the view that God created man and women. It's really the only view that comports with truth. And so, but this idea that somehow we got to do away with that relationship because homosexuality is so much better, and the queer origins, as they call this, or the doctrine, it really is a terrible fiction that's being foisted on society today.
Yeah, it is a very unfortunate fiction has a major price. There's also attacks against Christians by major media profiles in the news media. If you call this person who has news, I see him more as a entertaining conversationalist, if you will.
Yeah.
Bill Maher mocks the Bible, and Christians, as secular Democrats, say the, quote, religious right is a threat to America. So what did Bill Maher do that has gotten conservatives and Christians so alarmed with his major accusations of vitriol against people of the Christian faith?
Yeah, well, we at a time when we're seeing a lot of vitriol expressed towards Christians and those who believe in the traditional ideas of society contained in Christian ethic, they are Dr. Bill Maher. He says basically in his HBO show, quote, as long as we're going to go to the trouble of another impeachment trial, we might as well be honest about what it's really about. The events of January 6th, that is the riots at the Capitol, were, he says, a faith-based initiative, close quote.
Yeah, when you say riots, we're talking about one incident, 60 radicals
Exactly.
with some Antifa people spurring them on.
Exactly.
The over 100,000 others were not involved in the quote. They were
Absolutely.
peaceful demonstrators, and now they're being persecuted.
Yes.
People I have a friend of mine. He lost his job. They found out he's a professor at Chapman. Lost his job
Yeah.
because he participated in the
Exactly.
objection of voter fraud and the absence of being Senate corrected.
That's
So we see that, but nonetheless, that's the truth. So
That's right, that is.
the people are using this false narrative of a massive quote riot, which didn't happen in that regard, and they're using it to stereotype, to purge, and to silence individuals. Now they're using it to attack Christians and say this was a faith-based initiative. The Christians, these evil, bad Christians, were the ones that were behind this. They are the enemy, and implicitly they're basically disregarding, not just promoting disregard, but I think trying to silence us and to shut us up and to intimidate in a way that's very, very dangerous from a religious freedom perspective.
Absolutely, it is very dangerous, and what they're trying to do is point to the, if you will, the nuttier aspects of some conservatives who did adopt some kind of strange things, but I don't have to get into the QAnon and all that nonsense. All I'm saying is they're saying that was basically the same as the book of Revelation, which is the only book of the Bible that promises a blessing if you read it and understand it. But the bottom line is that Mayer is trying to compare the kooky things of politics, sometimes kooky things, with the Bible, which is the Word of God, which has been upheld for centuries as the Word of God, as substantially what it was meant to be in the first century.
Yeah.
For instance.
Yeah, I know of no pastors in the United States anywhere that signed off on those few dozen radicals that stormed the Capitol.
Exactly.
None.
No one.
No pastors. However, there are many pastors in the United States that did sign off on the radical BLM and their rioting.
That's right.
And excused the violence and justified it. I guess Bill Maher doesn't have any issue with that.
No.
Which goes back to our earlier point of the hypocrisy of the fact they're focusing. They now have something to focus on from the quote conservative camp, if you will, and they just ignore what has massively taken place across the United States. In fact, this was brought out by a media interview with the National Police Association spokesman. Apparently, he said that police and many are extremely frustrated with the fact that they're focusing just on this few dozen in the Capitol, and the liberal left and the media are trying to ignore the massive rioting that's still taking place to this day in places like Portland and Seattle and others. Yeah,
this National Police Association spokesperson, Sergeant Betsy Smith, she says right now the media's current obsession is, white supremacy, white supremacists, and the Capitol riot. They don't want to talk about the other 99% of the violent riots that American law enforcement has been dealing with for almost a year now.
Yeah,
and in some cases longer. But this concentrated, the BLM, Antifa going into towns and basically destroying towns. In fact, on the very day of this so-called Capitol riot, there was in Portland and other places where they were burning down buildings and causing fires and attacking people. Nobody even paid attention to that.
Yeah, I understand also there weren't any burning of any buildings, smashing of any cars by those few radicals, even those who did do the Capitol. I think one of them went in Nancy Pelosi's desk, put his feet up, smoked a cigar, did a video of himself.
Right.
Other people, and there were 2 fatalities that took place tragically.
Yes.
From that, defense because of defensive measures that were taken to protect the Capitol.
Yes.
But they want to focus on that, but they don't want to focus on all the others and the fatalities and the massive deaths, particularly in the black community, and blacks killing blacks in these communities, and burning down businesses and rioting, and it's very hypocritical. It's interesting. He says right now, this National Police Association spokesman says right now, their current obsession is, this is the media, the leftist media, is you already said that part of the quote. Yeah. But he also points out that that we're dealing with something that is from the far left activists that's being ignored.
Yes.
And I think that's very concerning. On Inauguration Day, protesters were seen marching in the streets of Seattle and Portland before some individuals started to riot. Videos, photos where the aftermath were taken of property damaged,
Absolutely.
and yet this didn't make the news.
Yeah.
So it's a major double standard, and once again, that is why people need to have an alternative news source other than CNN, ABC, MSNBC, even Fox News, which is now very compromised. They got rid of they got rid of Lou Dobbs.
Yes, that's right.
That's very telling.
Yeah,
Lou Dobbs had one of the highest ratings on Fox Business.
that's right.
It wasn't because people weren't watching.
No,
It's because
no.
they don't like what he's saying,
That's right.
which is I think very indicative of where they're headed. So people need to look to alternative places, and one of those places I know is Newsmax,
That's right.
One America News,
Yes,
and of course his channel,
that's right.
and then getting resources like our Legal Insider newsletter at pji.org.
Absolutely. And the thing is that, look, nobody contended that the people that got into the Capitol were right. Everyone I know, every reasonable person said that was wrong what they did. Every part of it was wrong. But here we have not a word and no attempts to stop this rioting that in Portland lasted the entire summer and now is happening again. And in Seattle, where they took over an area of property, and all of this is happening, and all they want to talk about are the Christians or the right wingers and things of that nature, a la Bill Mayer and others. That's all they want to talk about, the press, and that's wrong. That is not giving us a true picture of where the problems lie.
Yeah, they stereotype anyone that supported Trump. If you're a conservative, Republican, supported Trump, or Christian, that is someone who believes in the Bible, believes in Christianity, true Christianity. You're called all kinds of names.
That's right.
Typified as a racist, a hate monger, which is the opposite of Christianity.
Absolutely.
The policies advocated by conservatives are actually going to be much more helpful in the inner city, providing school choice, getting rid of Planned Parenthood killing unborn babies in black communities,
Yes.
which they target, the racist Planned Parenthood targets. And yet this is the false information that they're conveying. And unfortunately, so many Americans who naively watch these news channels
Yes.
are being pulled into it, especially CNN and MSNBC. There's just so many.
Yes, right.
There's so many out there that need to be
Pretty much
called
across
out,
the board, except for very few.
except for very few. And so people need to be aware that they're going to be brainwashed. When I was in college once, I gave a speech, and it was on brainwashing. And the professor gave the first 100 she's ever given in her life in the speech course.
Yeah.
And my basic conclusion was, unless you are taking a proactive measure to get the alternative perspective,
Yes.
you are willingly giving yourself in to being brainwashed.
Yeah.
And that applies not only to kids in college, which was my focus, it also applies to news media.
Right.
It applies to the world around us. And that's why choosing
does.
to have a relationship with the Lord and to grow in that relationship and be in the Word and to have fellowship with believers is so important today, more than ever. So, folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus, president of the Pacific Justice Institute. Let's continue the fight for your freedoms. Okay, we got to find out about Friday. Okay, quick question. On Friday, Michael said we're on